Today we're making Cinnamon Babka, a deliciously twisted, buttery bread that's as beautiful as it is tasty. Babka originated in Eastern Europe, where the leftover challah dough was filled, rolled, and baked into something special. Now don't worry, it is easier to make than it looks, and I'll guide you through every step. Let's get baking. We're going to start off with our dough, which will take the longest time to prep. We're going to add 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour with a half cup of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and 10 tablespoons of butter that's been cut into cubes. Mix this quickly by hand, coating the butter before creating a well in the center, where we will add our 3 large eggs, 1.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast, which I proofed in a few tablespoons of our milk, and then add the remaining 1 cup of whole milk. I'm going to be kneading this by hand, but you can always use a stand mixer, which will make this next step a little easier. Mix this together with a spoon until it becomes to form a flaky dough, and then I used my hands to squeeze this together before I turned it out onto a lightly floured surface, where I began to knead the dough for about 10 to 12 minutes. It took a few minutes for the butter and the other ingredients to fully mix in and for the dough to become less sticky, but you can always use a bit more flour as needed to keep it from sticking to your hands. The dough isn't as bad once it gets going. The dough is now smooth and slightly tacky, not super sticky, and so I'm going to shape it into a ball and place it into a clean bowl where I'll let it rise for about an hour, hour and a half, or until it's risen about 50%. We're then going to place it in the fridge for 4 hours to chill and finish the rise. This will add some extra flavor to the dough, and it's definitely going to make it a little bit easier to work with when we go to roll it out. So near the end of the 4-hour rise, I'm going to go and prep our pans and finishing the other 2 items. Brush the bottom of 2 bread pans with some melted butter, line them with some parchment paper with some overhang, and then we can set these aside. Now for the spread, in a small bowl, we're going to mix 1 cup of the cookie butter with 2 tablespoons of melted butter, 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, and a half teaspoon of salt. Stir this together with a fork until it combines into a nice smooth paste. Cover this and set it aside. The crumble topping is just as simple. We're going to mix 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour with a half cup of lightly packed brown sugar with 1.5 sticks of melted butter. Again, using a fork, work this together until you have an even, crumbly texture. Set this aside until your dough has fully risen and it's ready to be rolled out. Now on a lightly floured surface, we're going to start by dividing the dough in half, and we're going to place the unused half back in the fridge. Using your hands at first, we're going to press out any built-up air pockets, and then you can start to pull and shape the dough into a rectangle. Then, sprinkling a bit more flour as needed, begin to roll out the dough into a 10 by 18 inch rectangle. Scoop half of the cookie butter mixture onto your dough and spread it evenly over the surface. We want to leave about a ½ inch from the far edge clean so we can seal it later on. Slowly begin to roll the dough onto itself, maintaining an even roll, and then pinch those edges to seal it up. You can stretch or squeeze your roll if needed to thin out any thicker sections. Now we're going to take your rolled dough and shape it into an upside down U, where we can then twist the arms of dough around once or twice, tucking the ends underneath and transferring it to one of your prepared loaf pans. Repeat this step a second time with the remaining dough. We're going to cover and let these sit until the dough has proofed about 50% and is nice and fluffy. This takes about an hour. A few minutes before the step is done, preheat your oven to 350. Once the dough has finished its final proofing, we're going to go ahead and give it a light egg wash and then top this with our crumble, pressing it down as needed so it sticks to the top of the loaf. Let this cook for 50 to 60 minutes until the loaves have browned and the internal temperature is 185 degrees Fahrenheit. Remove them from the oven and let these cool for about 5 to 10 minutes before removing them from the pans to cool completely before serving. If you have any recipes you'd like me to try in the future, please feel free to leave me a suggestion in the comments below. I'm always happy to try new things. Thank you so much for watching. Happy baking!